When someone stops valuing you, it doesn't happen overnight. It starts slowly, a delayed reply, a missing compliment, a forgotten promise. You feel it deep down before you even fully understand what's happening. You sense the shift, the warmth you once felt in their presence begins to fade, and you begin to question your own worth. You wonder if you did something wrong, if you've changed, if you're no longer enough. But the truth is, being unvalued has more to do with the other person's perception than your actual worth. People change, that's a part of life. But what we often forget is that along with change, priorities shift too. Someone who once made you feel like the world can suddenly make you feel invisible. And that hurts. But don't confuse their change in behavior with your value. Their emotional shift isn't your fault. Sometimes people get comfortable. Sometimes they stop trying, and sometimes they just aren't meant to stay in your life forever. Accepting this truth can be painful, but it's also powerful. Because the moment you stop blaming yourself is the moment you take your power back. When someone doesn't value you anymore, the natural instinct is to do more, to prove yourself, to explain, to fix what's broken. But here's the hard truth. The more you chase someone who doesn't see your worth, the more you lose sight of your own. You start seeking validation from someone who's already emotionally checked out. You lower your standards, ignore your boundaries, and silence your own needs. You begin performing for their attention, when in reality, you deserve presence, not performance. The more you chase them, the more you abandon yourself. That's where the trick comes in. The simple, powerful shift: stop, just stop, pull back. Withdraw your energy, not in anger, not in spite, but in peace. Because distance is not always a weapon, sometimes it's wisdom. When you remove your presence from someone who's taking you for granted, you create space for clarity, for truth, for realignment, and most importantly, space for them to realize what they've lost. The silence, the stillness, it speaks louder than all the words you've ever said. And then comes the moment where everything begins to shift. The person who once ignored your messages starts to wonder why you haven't reached out. The person who overlooked your efforts begins to feel your absence. You see, people don't miss your presence, they miss your energy, your kindness, your effort, your love, the very things they once took for granted. When your energy disappears, it creates a void, and that void makes people reflect. But here's the beauty. By that time, you have changed too. You've stopped seeking, stopped pleasing, and started protecting your peace. You're no longer begging for crumbs of attention. You're setting boundaries with strength and grace. You're no longer reacting emotionally. You're responding with silence, with dignity, with distance. And in that space of distance, everything becomes clear, not just to them, but to you. You begin to realize that self-worth isn't something you earn by convincing someone else. It's something you declare when you decide to stop shrinking just to be accepted. Because the most powerful message you can send is not through words, but through your absence. When you finally step back, when you give them space to feel your absence, sometimes they come back. But here's where you need to pause and ask yourself a hard question. Why are they returning? Is it because they truly see your value now? Or is it because they miss the comfort you provided, the control they had, the way you always made them feel important? Not every return is a sign of love. Some are just ego. Some are just convenience. And if you're not careful, you'll fall right back into the same pattern, mistaking their curiosity for commitment and their guilt for growth. And if they don't come back, let that silence be your answer. It may sting at first, but eventually you'll understand you didn't lose something real, you lost an illusion. The idea of what you hoped they would become, not who they actually were. If someone can walk away from you and never look back, let that be the biggest gift, because that clarity sets you free. Free from waiting, free from overthinking, free from settling for half-hearted love. You don't need a loud goodbye to close the chapter. Sometimes silence is the most honest closure you'll ever get. That's the real beauty of this distance. It doesn't just reveal their intentions, it reveals yours. It helps you see who's really meant to stay and who was just passing through. The trick is not just about stepping back, it's about observing what happens in that silence. Do they reach out? Do they notice? Or does your absence not even cause a ripple in their world. That's your answer, because the right ones won't let you slip away without a fight, and the wrong ones, they were never holding on in the first place. While you're watching their reaction, don't forget to shift your own, redirect the energy you used to give them, the late night thoughts, the emotional labor, the constant checking in, and start pouring that into yourself. Focus on your healing, on your goals, on your peace. There's a version of you on the other side of this pain. Stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. You just haven't met them yet. And as you continue growing, they'll start to feel it, even from afar. They'll feel the energetic difference. The version of you that used to chase is no longer chasing. The version that used to beg is now silent. That silence, it teaches them more than any argument ever could. Your absence becomes a mirror. It shows them what they took for granted. It shows them what they lost. But none of this works. Not the trick, not the healing, not the peace. Unless you detach, truly detach. That's where healing begins. Not in pretending, not in revenge, but in letting go of the hope that they'll become someone they never were. In releasing the emotional grip you've had on something that's already fallen apart. And once you detach, you'll start to breathe again. Not because they came back, not because they noticed, but because you finally chose you. You are not hard to love. Let that sink in for a moment. Just because someone failed to appreciate you doesn't mean you're too much, too emotional, too intense, or too complicated. Their inability to value says more about them than it ever will about you. Not everyone is ready for real connection. Not everyone can handle depth, honesty, or consistency. And when someone lacks those qualities, they often blame you for being too sensitive rather than admitting they're not capable of loving deeply. So don't carry that weight. Don't keep replaying the moments you tried harder, loved more, gave endlessly. You did your part, you showed up. Now it's time to turn that love inward. Start showing up for yourself the way you did for them. The care, the loyalty, the time, the energy. Imagine how far you'd go if you invested that in your own growth. You don't need to wait for someone else to validate your value when you can become your own source of peace and strength. And when you make that shift, everything begins to change. You glow differently. You walk differently. You stop reacting to their silence or mixed signals because you're no longer living in reaction mode. You're choosing your response. You're choosing your peace. That glow up isn't about how you look. It's about how you feel inside when you're no longer tied to someone who made you feel invisible. The most powerful transformation is quiet. It happens in the background while you're healing. No announcement, no drama, just peace. You're not waiting for a text. You're not checking who viewed your story. You're not trying to prove anything, and they notice. They always notice. When you stop being available, when your attention shifts, but by then, it's no longer about whether they notice, it's about whether you even care anymore. This is how you teach people how to treat you, not with arguments or repeated explanations, but with what you tolerate and what you walk away from. You don't have to scream your worth. Your silence, your boundaries, and your standards will speak louder. And over time, the world adjusts. People either rise to meet your energy or fall away because they were never aligned with it to begin with. You might still crave closure, still want answers, but understand this. Closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you create. You become the closure. When you accept that not everything broken needs to be fixed, not everyone who leaves needs to return, and not every what if deserves your time, that's when you truly move on. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't need to prove your worth to the person who couldn't see it. All you need is peace, and that you can give to yourself starting now.